Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Airlift WirelessAIR air compressor system here on our 2019 Ford F-250. So an air compressor system is going to be an excellent addition to your F-250 here if one, you have airbags, and two, if you tow or haul frequently or different varying load sizes. Now, the reason an air compressor system is important when we have multiple trailers and we haul frequently is because it allows you to adjust the air pressure inside your airbags from the flick of a switch inside the cab of our truck. Therefore, we don't have to rely on access to an external air compressor whenever we change our loads or hook up a new trailer. It's going to make everything that much faster and easier. So this is personally my favorite air compressor system on the market, and I know if I talk to a lot of my coworkers here at etrailer, they love this one as well. And the reason for that is two reasons. Number one, it's wireless. Now, with a wireless design, what that essentially means is you don't have to run any wires or air lines from the outside of the vehicle into the cab. Everything is going to be done wirelessly using an in-cab controller. So cutting down on those extra air lines is going to make for an easier install. It's also going to reduce the potential for leaks. So that's the first reason why we really love this kit. And the second reason has to do with everything being integrated on one bracket. So Airlift has actually thought of an awesome bracket design that encompasses both the compressor and the manifold into one part. You don't have to worry about assembling any of that, finding new spots on the vehicle. Everything that you need is on one bracket that you just simply bolt onto the vehicle and then run all your lines and wires. So something else great with this air compressor system is that it's going to be compatible with both Airlift and Firestone air helper springs. So no matter which one you have on your truck, this kit is going to work great for you. So this kit here does come with everything you need to complete the installation from start to finish. Now, this particular truck is a crew cab long bed, so it's quite a long one. So unfortunately, we did have to add some more airlines. So you may or may not have to do this depending on your cab configuration and your bed type, or just depending on where you mount everything. You're probably gonna have some airline left over from your airbag, so you may not need to purchase additional ones. Just keep that in mind for those people who have those longer trucks, that there is a finite amount of airline that comes with your kit. So we mentioned everything being able to be controlled inside the cab of the vehicle, and that's how we're going to be doing this with this wireless remote here. Now, if you don't like the wireless remote, you can also download a mobile app so you can do everything on your phone, so just keep that in mind. But I really like this remote here. It's very easy to use. So it's going to go into sleep mode whenever you're not using it, so you don't have to worry about it wearing down the battery. Just hit a button to wake it up. So here's going to be the main screen. So this is how we're going to inflate and deflate our airbags. So this is very easy to use. If we just hit the up arrow, this is going to increase the pressure in both sides of our airbag. So we'll put it up to 10, press that center button to confirm, and we should hear our air compressor kick on. Now, on the contrary, when we need to reduce the pressure, we just hit the down button. This is going to reduce the pressure in both bags. Now, 5 psi is the minimum. You can't go any lower than this, and the reason for that is that this is how much is required inside your airbags at all times to make sure they don't deform. But something else great about this kit is that we can also adjust the pressure inside our bags individually. If we just hit either of these arrows here, you can see on our screen it's going to either take away the left or right arrow depending on which one we press, and we can actually just inflate that bag. So the majority of the time, you're probably just going to be inflating both bags together. So this feature isn't particularly useful for everyone, but there are a couple people out there that may need it. So therefore, it is there for you guys. But as we said, this is very easy to use. You can increase the pressure and decrease the pressure. There's all kinds of settings you can mess with as well. You can change the unit of measurements, whether you prefer PSI or bar. You can also change the adjustability depending on what type of airbags you have. So another great feature about this kit is that we have 3 presets. So what our presets are basically going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to jump in our truck and easily adjust the pressure without having to go through that initial setup that we would with the trailer originally. So say we have 3 different trailers. Say I have a utility trailer, a horse trailer, and a fifth wheel trailer. Well, those aren't all going to be the same weight. So we're going to require a different PSI for each of those. So once we determine what the correct PSI is to give us the best mix between support and comfort, we could easily just set that to one of the presets. That way, whenever we get in the truck and we attach to that trailer, we just have to hit the 1, 2, or 3 preset depending on which one we have. So in regards to installation, as we said, the whole reason we like this kit is that it's very easy to install. Everything is integrated into one bracket, and we don't have to worry about routing any additional air lines or wires into the cab of the vehicle. It's pretty much straightforward, and almost everything we need is going to come with, depending on options on your truck. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and walk you through this entire process step by step now. I would give yourselves around 1 to 2 hours. We're just going to need some common hand tools to get this job done, and you don't need to have the vehicle in the air whatsoever. So the first step of our installation, we need to take our compressor and manifold assembly here, looks like this, and find the spot to mount this on the vehicle. Now I recommend mounting it over here on the passenger side, and ideally we want to mount this sort of in the center of the vehicle underneath the cab there. Now on the passenger side though, we have some modules and wires on the outside of the frame towards the center, so we're just going to bump it up a little farther forward to this area here. You can see we have that barcode on the frame with some stickers, so I'm thinking over here is going to be a great place to mount this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hold it up there. Now in your kit you get a couple different attachment options. There's actually 3 to be exact. It comes with a U-bolt that wraps around the frame for a no drilling method. It also comes with some self-tapping screws as well as some nuts and bolts. Now unfortunately the Ford frames are just a tad bit too big for those U-bolts to work, so we won't be able to use that. And since we don't really have access inside the frame here, we won't be able to use the nuts and bolts. Therefore we're going to be using the self-tapping screws. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our assembly here. Now we want to make sure that our logo isn't facing the ground or upside down, so I'm just going to have it pointed just pretty much how we would be reading it normally. And I'm just going to sort of mock up here. I'm going to try to go as high as I can, but there is a wiring harness there, so I'm just going to hold it here into position about where I want it. Make sure there's no obstructions there. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm just going to take a white paint marker and I'm just going to trace out one of our mounting holes. Now once I have that paint marker on there, I'm going to take a center punch tool. I'm going to dent the center of that hole there. Now we can begin drilling it to our final size. So the final size that our hole needs to be is a 1/4 inch, but it's going to be pretty tough to drill straight through the frame with a 1/4 inch drill bit. So we're going to start with a smaller pilot bit here, make our pilot hole, and then we'll come back with our 1/4 inch drill bit to enlarge it to the final size. So now that we have our hole drilled, we're going to take our self-threading bolt there, and we're just going to try to get it started as best we can, forming the threads in the frame. So we need to put a good amount of pressure there on that bolt, and we want to make sure that we're threading it in straight. So that's starting to look pretty good. And just an FYI, we'll use a 13mm socket for this. So I'm going to continue forming those threads there, making sure that our bolt is as straight as we can get it. Now I'm not going to go all the way down, just going to give it a couple more turns. And I'm going to back it out and place our compressor and manifold into position before I start tightening it more. So now that we have the bracket up in there with our bolt started, I'm actually just going to let the compressor sort of hang down like so. I'm going to use an extension there on our ratchet, and now I'm going to begin tightening this down a little bit more. We're not going to run it all the way down because we still need to get our bracket up here sort of parallel to the frame. So now I'm going to go ahead and hold the compressor up sort of level with the frame here as best as we can. I'm going to mark out our other hole there with a paint marker. And then I'm going to let the bracket swing down. Now we're going to take our center punch tool again, and as best we can, mark the exact center of that hole. So now we'll come back with our drill bits, the same method that we showed you over here, and enlarge this to the final size, which is a 1/4 inch. So now that we have both of these bolts tight, Now keep in mind there isn't a torque spec for these, and you don't want to over tighten them so you can strip out the hole. So what I did is I just turned it a couple times and I sort of wiggled that bracket to make sure there was no play, and I just turned it a couple more times. A lot of this is going to be by feel, so you don't want to put a ton of force on those, just enough to snug them up. But now we can go ahead and move on. So the next thing we need to do is we need to find a spot to mount our remote filter. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to drill a 3/8 hole into the frame somewhere up here because there isn't another good spot to mount this. So if you guys do find a different spot, you're more than welcome to use that, but we're just going to go ahead and drill that hole there so I can stick it right in there and then hook everything up. So I'm going to try to go as high as I can without getting in the way of that wiring harness. So now that we have our hole drilled, I'm going to take our air filter here and I'm going to take the little barbed fitting that's going to screw onto the back of that air filter. And then we're going to take, so there's two different kinds of air lines in your kit. One of them is much more pliable than the other, and one of them is much more shorter. So we're going to grab this one here, the shorter air line, and we're going to thread that, or just push it over that barbed fitting there. And then we're just going to place this end into the hole we just drilled. So I think it's not quite grabbing on there. I think what's going on is the frame's a little bit too thick for this. So I'm just going to take a pair of snips there and I'm going to trim the legs on here so they can lock into place. There we go. Just as I thought, now it's locked into place. So now I'm just going to take my air line here. I'm going to route it sort of in between the compressor and the bracket to the other side where our inflation port nipple is. So we've got plenty of excess here. Just going to go ahead and cut that off. And then I'm just going to press it on to that barb fitting there coming from our compressor. So there we go. So now we're going to have our two wires coming from our compressor, the red and our black. We're going to start by removing the wire ends that are already on there because we won't be needing these. Then I'm going to strip back some of the jacket. And we're going to attach the butt connectors that come in your kit. So these are heat shrink butt connectors, so we will need to shrink them down once we get them attached on both sides. And now the other two sides are going to go to our wiring harness here. You can see one end has the connector, so we're going to grab the two wires on that connector end and just attach them color to color. Now that we have them attached, we'll go ahead and seal them up. So now that we've got our two connections sealed there, I'm actually going to come back. This probably isn't required, but I am going to come back with some electrical tape just to make sure there isn't any chance of water getting in there. And now we'll take our connector here. I'll go ahead and plug it into the manifold. It's only going to go in one way. We should hear it click when it's locked into place, and go ahead and press in on that locking tab as well. So now we're going to take our wiring harness here. We're going to be routing this up into the engine bay. We're going to be making our connection. So thankfully there's only a short distance, so it should be pretty easy. There's some existing wiring at the top of the frame we're going to zip tie it to, and then we'll show you how we get it up to the actual engine bay. So we're going to go ahead and do that now, and we'll show you the path we took. So you can see we have our bundle of wires into the engine bay here, and how we got those is we just took a spare piece of airline tubing and I pretty much just shoved it back behind the fuse box there all the way down, and then I sort of reached up underneath the vehicle, kind of peeled back that fender liner, and I was able to reach up there and grab it, and then I just tied my wires to it and pulled it back through the engine bay. So pretty simple, but now that we have the wires in here, we can begin making our connections. So we've got our wiring harness into the engine bay here, and I just routed it a little bit further forward to where our battery is. So first thing we're going to do is connect our ground. So this black wire here, I'm going to separate the rest of it because we have quite a bit of extra. Let's go ahead and cut that. Pretty thick wire. And then I'm going to strip off some of the jacket. And then I'm going to attach one of the ring terminals. Now, if we take a look at our ring terminal, you can see I cut out a little section there. That's because you're not actually supposed to remove this nut here from the negative battery terminal. So we're just going to loosen it a little bit, slide the ring terminal around, close the ends, and then zip it back down. Should be fine because, again, we can't remove that nut entirely. So now we're going to take a 10mm socket. I'm going to loosen up that nut there. Just enough where I can slide my ring terminal in there. There we go. Now I'm going to try to close the ends on that ring terminal as best as I can, and we'll zip it back down. So now that we have our black ground attached to the negative battery terminal, we're going to take the red power wire, we're going to attach that to the positive battery terminal. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove that cover there. Kind of sitting on our air filter housing. Just kind of move that out of the way. Then I'm going to take our red wire here. I'm going to go ahead and clip that. We have plenty of extra. I'm going to strip back some of the jacket, and then I'm going to attach it to the fuse holder that comes in your kit. So the fuse holder comes as a loop. You're going to go ahead and clip the loop there. On one side we're going to attach the ring terminal, the other side we attach a butt connector, and then I'm just going to attach the other end of this butt connector to this red wire. Now that I'm sure I got a nice and tight connection, I'm going to remove this nut here on our battery. So you'll need a 10mm socket. Make sure you don't lose the nut. And then we will attach our ring terminal and resecure the nut. So this is going to leave us with our pink wire here, which is going to be for a fused ignition source. So we're going to go ahead and find that now, and then we'll show you what we hooked it up to. So now the next thing we're going to do is, so to hook up our pink wire, as we said, we need to find a fused ignition circuit. So if you pop the two tabs on the side of your fuse box lid here, you can lift it up enough to reveal some of our fuse locations. So we went ahead and tested these for you, and we found one that's keyed, meaning it only has power when the ignition is on. And we're going to be using this one located right here. It's a red 10 amp fuse. So here is where that 10 amp fuse is. What we're going to do is we're going to take a pair of needle nose pliers. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out, and then I'll show you how to tie into that with our kit. So once we have the fuse out, we're going to be grabbing, there's two different size fuse splices in your kit here. We're going to be grabbing the smaller one. You can see there's a little rectangular cutout at the bottom of that. You're just going to slide that over one of the legs on your fuses. Once we have it on there, we're just going to slide it all the way up like so, and now we'll just simply reinstall that fuse. So it was a pretty tight fit in there, but we just use our needle nose pliers to just shove that down in there. But once you get that connected, you're going to take your smaller fuse holder here that comes in that other kit. So on one end, we're going to attach a blue butt connector. On the other end, we're going to attach the blue spade terminal. Now there's two different size spade terminals because there's two different size spades. So we're going to be grabbing the smaller one there. Just go ahead and crimp one onto each ends of our fuse holder, and then we're going to crimp this on to our pink wire here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that spade that we crimped onto our fuse holder, and it should just slide right over the terminal there coming from the leg of our fuse. So once we have it on there, I'm actually just going to fold it down to the back side there. So that's going to give us a little bit more clearance, and then I'm also going to need to cut a slit here into our fuse box in order to allow for access, or clearance rather, of that fuse holder. Alright, so now that we have the wiring wrapped up, we're going to go back underneath the truck there and run all of our air lines, and that's pretty much going to finish it for our installation. Alright, so now that we have all of the wiring pretty much wrapped up, we can move on to the installation of our air line. So this part is pretty simple and straightforward. We're going to go ahead and attach one side of our airline tubings to our manifold, run it back to one of the airbags, and there's another port on your manifold that goes to the other airbag. So we're going to go ahead and knock that out now, and then we'll show you the path that we took. So we've got our air lines ran here. Now our inflation valves, or our push to connect fittings, are on this side of our compressor, so we do have to come down and around. You want to make sure you don't have too sharp of an angle coming off those fittings. This is going to go between this bracket here. You can see they're just pretty much following the frame rail all the way to the rear here. We have our wire loom on the frame that we're just tying it to. And at this point here, you're going to go around the body and the cab mounts till you get to about this side over here. And then we're actually going to jump on the other side of the frame and show you how we secured it over there. So here's where your air lines are going to come out at. Now when we get to this little cross member here, you can see we have this heat shrink wire loom. One of your wires is going to go, or one of your airline tubes is going to go over to the other side, attached to the driver's side. The other one's just going to go up and over the cross member and go straight back. So let's go ahead and follow the one on this frame rail. You can see we have it routed through along here. Now we're going to go up and over the airbag because I can't make my connection right here because we obviously have the exhaust. So I want to make sure that's protected. So if we go on the other side of the exhaust, you're going to see our first T that comes in your kit. So here we have our T installed. We basically just spliced in line with our factory airline that's already ran to the vehicle for our manual inflation port. So we just put your T in between there, and this end is going to attach to the line that we just ran that comes from the compressor. Now let's jump back a few feet to where we split off the two lines so we can show you the other side. So now we're back here at our junction point. We're just going to follow this cross member all the way over. You can see I have zip ties every so few inches. We have something we can tie it onto. And then we're pretty much just going to go up and over the cross member, up and over the gas tank. It's sort of hidden back up there until you come out around this location here. Now you can see our airline, and if we look down just a little bit, we can see another one of our T fittings. So this one's a little bit more simple because there's more room to work, but basically we just cut about, I don't know, 10 inches or so away from the fitting on our airbag, installed our T in line just like we did on the other side, and then the output side is going to go to our air compressor. So we've got all of our air lines installed now. Now we're ready to power the system on, so we're going to be inserting our two fuses. So now directly after we insert our fuses, you do want to place the battery in your remote, turn it on and pair the system because the system actually has an allotted time for when you can pair it. So as soon as you put the fuses in, make sure you put the batteries in the remote and pair everything together. But once that's done, we're going to go ahead and inflate the system here to around 50 psi so we can check everything for leaks. So now that we have everything inflated, we're going to take a soapy water solution here. We're going to spray down all of our lines and fittings at the connections here so we can check for leaks. If we do have leaks, we're going to have rapid forming bubbles, and in which case we'd want to recut the line, possibly retighten the fitting down, or in cases like this, you would make sure there wasn't such an extreme bend there. So these look good here at the manifold, so now we're going to work our way back there to the airbags. And now with no leaks detected, that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the Airlift WirelessAIR air compressor system here on our 2019 Ford F-250.